So this morning I have two readings that are non-scriptural. And I chose these two readings because I want to talk about the doctrine of Christian discovery this morning. We grant to you full and free power through the apostolic authority by this edict to invade, conquer, fight, subjugate the Saracens and pagans and other infidels and other enemies of Christ, and wherever established their kingdoms, duchies, royal palaces, principalities, and other dominions, lands, places, estates, camps, and any other possessions, mobile and immobile goods found in all these places and held in whatever name, and held and possessed by the same Saracens, pagans, infidels, and the enemies of Christ, also realms, duchies, royal palaces, principalities, and other dominions, lands, places, estates, camps, possessions of the king or prince, or of the kings or princes, and to lead their persons in perpetual servitude, and to apply in appropriate realms, duchies, royal palaces, principalities, and other dominions, possessions, and goods of this kind to you and your use and your successors, the kings of Portugal. Dum Diversa by Pope Nicholas V. We, therefore, weighing all and singular the premises with due meditation, and noting that since we had formerly, by other letters of ours, granted among other things free and ample faculty to the aforesaid King Alfonso to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ, wheresoever placed in the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever, held and the possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his and their use and profit. Romanus Pontifex by Pope Nicholas V. If you would please pray with me. God of grace and mercy, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. The first time I heard the words doctrine of Christian discovery was in 2012, when the Unitarian Universalist Church first started discussing the repudiation of this doctrine. I had the good fortune of attending their General Synod meeting in the summer of 2012, where this was a highlighted conversation. Upon returning to Pennsylvania, though, I decided to develop an independent study course regarding the doctrine of Christian discovery. My primary interest involved the use of these documents, the ones I just read, to set early colonial policy regarding indigenous peoples in this country, and how much of this history has been obfuscated, perhaps on purpose. Since we are taking up a special collection for neighbors in need, part of which goes to support the ministries of indigenous people who are part of the United Church of Christ, it seemed appropriate to talk about the importance of this issue and how it impacts us as followers of Christ. So what is the doctrine of Christian discovery? Simply put, it is the idea that explorers from Spain or Portugal who discovered lands that were held by those deemed to be non-Christian, the explorers could seize the land, the people, and the resources for king and church. The two readings I shared with you this morning are excerpts from much larger documents known as papal bulls, issued by Pope Nicholas V in the 1400s on behalf of Spain and Portugal. During the Age of Discovery, when most of these lands and people were seized, the Catholic Church was still the primary authority throughout the Western world. There was little separation between church and state, which meant that the political entities of these various countries required the blessing and permission of the Pope before they were allowed to explore and seize land, people, and resources. If you remember your history, Spain, Portugal, and other countries were looking for shorter trade routes to India because their route through Constantinople had been cut off. Christopher Columbus was one of many who sailed for church and country. In grade school, I was taught that Columbus sailed the ocean blue in, do you remember it? 1492. Very good. Along with that, I learned that the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria landed off the coast of what is now Florida. Did you learn that? Yes, okay. Imagine my surprise when, as an adult, I read a revised account of their journey, which stated that he and his crew landed in the Bahamas. The Bahamas. Most likely on Watling Island. This account further explained how they systematically eradicated the Ararat Indians. We didn't get that in my history book. Likewise, when I studied colonial history, there was never any mention of these documents and how they were used to seize and claim land and resources as part of discovered properties that were brought under the auspices of the colonial government. It was only when I was pointed in the right direction that I found these documents had been there all along. They were just conveniently left out of my history book. James Madison, in particular, wrote several Supreme Court decisions regarding the discovery and seizing of property by land developers that gave the developers the right to take the land and its resources with impunity. The most notable of these decisions being Johnson v. McIntosh. These court decisions set the precedent for seizing most indigenous lands and the resources found therein. What is astounding is that these doctrines have been invoked as late as 2005 in the case between the city of Sherrill versus the Oneida Indians. And this is why we talk about these kinds of issues in church today. As part of the United Church of Christ, we no longer want to conveniently forget that atrocities happened in the name of God at the hands of settlers and explorers. In my household, we often say Christianity has a lot to answer for. In 2013, the United Church of Christ wrote a resolution to repudiate the doctrine of Christian discovery. Included in the resolutions are the establishment of partnerships with various indigenous groups, one of which is the Council for American Indian Ministries, which is affiliated with the United Church of Christ. As a denomination, we are continually seeking ways to provide reparations for lands and resources seized as a result of using the papal bulls as justification for taking lands, people, and resources. In addition, the UCC has requested that study materials be made available so that we as a denomination may be made aware of our culpability as part of the Christian faith for the atrocities committed under these doctrines. Financially contributing to neighbors in need is one way that each local congregation can make a difference in these affected communities. The money that we collect today helps provide a variety of ministerial resources to the Council for American Indian Ministries, as well as to support other justice and witness ministries of the United Church of Christ. We may not be able to rewrite history, but we can attempt to reconcile with our history by making today and the future a brighter place. We understand now more than ever that we are all united in the body of Christ. We may look different, we may have different customs, we may even call God by a different name, but we are all part of the body of Christ. The United Church of Christ chooses to stand in solidarity with indigenous peoples everywhere. The denomination as a whole is asking us as members of this denomination to be bold in our witness to the love of Christ, available to all. It isn't about the color of our skin, where we were born, or what lineage we are derived from. It is about the love in our hearts for all humankind. We have been talking about living in community for weeks, and this is part of that bigger conversation. May your hearts be moved by your desire to live in solidarity with all people, to see all people walk in the freedom Christ brings, and to know the love of Christ as it was meant to be shared. The gift of God was the life he offered freely to all. May it be so. Amen.